Bill and I we're just wrapping that up now for it to go into production. Uh, Artificial intelligence is sometimes treated as one of the cognitive sciences, but really it deserves a book of its own. It's a very large field and a very important field. There are really two aspects to it. One is uh, the creation of artificial minds, which might differ quite a lot from the human mind. That's really a sort of engineering problem approach, an engineering approach to the subject. It's a very tricky question. I mean, we have chapters in both of the books on emotions. So there is a chapter on the cognitive science of emotions, which asks what sort of cognitive role emotion play. What are emotions for? A very complex social and cultural element to them. And for those emotions, perhaps then you're going to need to have a society of the kind that humans have to develop emotions that we would recognize as love in ourselves. I mean, one important part of love is knowing about sort of artistic representations of emotion, of love, about the songs, the poetry, the literature, and so on. So without all that, you might say, well, I understand love in our sense, but they can certainly have a bunch of basic emotions that are an important part of love. And similarly, I think with artificial systems, they can have some of the basic components of love. And maybe if they become sophisticated enough, they can start to develop their own culture of love, which might be rather different from ours. The nature of memory, I mean, memory is, the first thing to say is that memory isn't just one thing. Memory seems to be a bunch of systems. There are different kinds of memory. Memory for facts, there are memories, memory for events, there's short-term memory, there's long-term memory. There are many different, the everyday concept of memory, when you start to look at it from a psychological point of view, breaks down into many different systems, which seem to have independent bases in the brain. And this is one thing that is explored in the chapter by Charan Ranganathan and colleagues in our book. So really, I would suggest you have a look at that together, the detailed picture. Why do people sometimes recall things wrongly? Well, I think there can be a lot of reasons. I mean, one thing it's important to remember is that memory isn't like it's not like a tape recorder. It's not an actual record of events in the sense that you might have a record on a cassette tape or a video camera. It's not just a replaying of the event. It's in some sense a recreation of the event.
Of course, one area has always been computer science and artificial intelligence. And probably the area of this book that focuses primarily on those issues deals with questions about cognitive architectures. Generally, a kind of underlying theme that comes up in a lot of the chapters is the idea that the mind is a computational system, or it's an information processing system. And computers and computational systems have always served as a model for understanding cognition. Now, of course, then the question is, well, what kind of a computational system is it? And in recent years, there's been some really interesting development. Yeah, I actually have an excellent chapter on evolutionary psychology, which is a growing field, by Clark Barrett, and it's very, very well done. And it's a nice introduction to the field of evolutionary psychology. This has become a big area of research. And sort of one question is, well, how did our brains develop, and how did these different cognitive capacities come about? And of course, one very plausible answer is that the adaptation that humans developed, we have all